Lewis Hamilton experienced a disastrous Brazilian GP in which he barely scored a point behind the duo of Racing Bulls and Piastri in between them, as he labelled the W15 the worst car he has ever driven. Furthermore, he suggested that he might not even finish the season with 3 races remaining and 1 sprint event now that he's behind Russell in the Drivers' Championship, despite having 2 wins in the bag this year. But will Mercedes actually allow this move, and what is their stance on the 7-time world champion's struggles? It's safe to assume that Hamilton has been quite uncomfortable in the W15, and by finishing P11 in the sprint and P10 in the race that started the championship fight comeback in 2021, there is no doubt that questions will be raised about the remainder of the season, or more precisely for the last 3 races. Hamilton sent a cryptic message in Brazil to his race engineer Peter Bonington, as he said, "That was a disaster of a weekend, guys, the worst the car has ever been. Thank you for contributing to try, and great job to all the guys in the pit stop. If this is the last time I get to perform, it was a shame it wasn't great, but I am grateful to you." Obviously, many would consider that to be a direct insult towards the mechanics who are working tirelessly to put the car in the right operating window. But it's quite weird to see Russell holding Norris off for 27 laps before the virtual safety car came out and Hamilton wasn't able to make positions in the manner he hoped for, having exited the early Sunday qualifying session in Q1. Throughout the entire weekend, Hamilton has gone on to complain about the ride quality and the bouncing of the car, and seeing himself being overtaken by rookies like Behrman and struggling to get past Lawson is definitely not the way you'd want to end such a legendary tenure in the team with which he won 6 drivers' championships. Be that as it may, the Brit didn't mince his words when it comes to how he feels about the car right now, further stating, "With the car I have right now, it's the worst I've ever driven, so I probably won't be going very far with it. At least one car was behaving. It's like a plank of wood. There is no suspension. It's just bouncing on the tyres everywhere. I can't get on the power anywhere. The worst ride, definitely, that we've ever had, particularly through corners. The car was just so stiff." Furthermore, he talked to Sky Sports and said that he would much rather go on a holiday than having to drive the W15 for the remainder of the season. And another cryptic message was sent when he drove the iconic MP44 of Ayrton Senna as a tribute to the Brazilian legend of the sport, adding that this is the type of car he would much rather drive this weekend rather than the one Mercedes are giving him. As we all know, this is a 7-time world champion who, along with Verstappen, is considered to be one of the best drivers in the wet, so to not make any positions and to barely finish P10, it's understandable that something has gone horribly wrong with the car. Mercedes are now adamant that the problem is not in Hamilton but in the car. But what's very confusing to understand is how Russell is able to be very competitive with the machinery that he's given while Hamilton is struggling massively. And on top of that, why is the W15 of the 7-time world champion the car that is constantly suffering from last-minute changes that somehow seem to affect the car in a very bad way? When talking about it, Andrew Chauvelin, the trackside engineer of Mercedes, has elaborated further on this, stating, "Normally you are able to work on the car in these types of weekends in Brazil. You let the drivers deviate with the setup. They do not have to run the same, and we will let them evolve their own setup. And when one of them appears to be going well, you often take elements of that setup or even the whole lot and put it onto the other car." Now, it's fair to say that Lewis was struggling predominantly with a lack of rear grip. If we look at how he had set up his car, it is not obvious where that was coming from. As with any race, we spend a lot of time digging into the data, trying to understand it, and Lewis's engineering crew will be working with him on this issue, trying to make sure we get to the bottom of it before Vegas. But again, Chauvelin confirmed what we feared the most. The car is acting differently on the same circuit under different conditions, and while this is normal to expect for the majority of the teams because of the setup they've done on their cars, the deviations that Hamilton has experienced are just too big, and it goes goes to show that there is a situation in which he might be the less preferred driver in Mercedes. This is a team that is now focused on Russell being the leader from 2025 onwards, with Antonelli and with Hamilton already giving up on Mercedes even before testing the W15 in pre-season. It was obvious that a scenario like this would happen, and it would be greatly emphasised once he'd start to be absent from certain meetings with the engineers. However, Mercedes have blocked the move that would have allowed Hamilton to leave the team in the last 3 races and just focus on rejuvenating his career that is now closer to the end than to the beginning, and said that he will race in the remainder of 2024 as well as complete all of the duties that he needs to do after the finale in Abu Dhabi. If you're to remember, the team said that they won't allow Hamilton to leave on Monday 9th of December because this is the time when the tyre testing starts, and more often than not, teams that see their drivers leave at the end of the year are often doing a sportsmanlike gesture in allowing the driver in question to go and accommodate the other team as soon as possible. That won't be happening with Mercedes because, according to them, they have a lot on their plate to deal with, and Hamilton will have to visit a lot of places as part of the long-term journey he's experienced with Mercedes. So it'll be interesting to see how that will end up. Johnny Herbert, one of the most infamous people on the grid due to his personal involvement with Verstappen, has also commented on this entire situation between Hamilton and Mercedes, as the FIA steward and F1 pundit believes that there is something fundamentally wrong with the car that he's being forced to drive. He said, "Lewis Hamilton can't wait to get to Christmas. It is very confusing. There are times when he shows his real raw speed and then it all vanishes. How and why does that happen? That's what I don't understand. The car is a bit up and down like a yo-yo anyway, and George has similar issues. Lewis is coming to the end of his time at Mercedes, and George is the future, and Antonelli is lined up for next season, so Mercedes will be favouring George, and a lot of the energy and input will be coming from him." However, there are many who believe that the age has finally caught up with Hamilton and that he might be edging closer to retirement due to how modern the new F1 cars are. Keep in mind that this is a man who's been racing ever since 2007, so he has gone through a lot of eras with the cars. According to many, he's currently going through an era that Ricciardo has been through, being unable to adapt to the ground effect car, and that itself will hurt his chances of winning the 8th championship with Ferrari, especially considering the fact that he has Leclerc as his opponent next to him in the garage. But this is an issue that we're going to have to wait until 2025 to see how it evolves. And according to Horner, Hamilton will be a massive threat to Verstappen and his team since the first race in Australia from 2025, when he hops in the prancing horse. Adding further to this extent, Horner said, "Hamilton is obviously coming out of a very comfortable environment, one that he knows very well over the last 10 years, so that will be a change for him. Leclerc is another very fast driver, but Ferrari is a team that looks like they're picking up momentum. For sure, a driver of Lewis quality is always going to be a challenger. He could be just jumping at the right time. He has obviously seen things that he's chosen to change teams for because he believes in the future of Ferrari, so that is going to be fascinating to see how that plays out." With all this in mind, do you think that Hamilton's tenure in Mercedes is something that he will have a very painful time going through, given the condition of the W15? And more importantly, do you think that the team is doing everything they can in order for Russell to finish ahead of his compatriot in the Drivers' Championship? Let us know in the comments below, and check out the latest development regarding the Red Bull seat of Perez from 2025 onwards. That's in the video that's appearing on your screen right now.